Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer. This time bringing you a video on Esoteric Ebb, an upcoming RPG inspired by D&D and Disco Elysium, developed by Christopher Beaudegard and published by Sudden Snail. Its Steam description reads, Esoteric Ebb is an isometric 5e disco-like CRPG set in a unique post-arcane punk fantasy setting. You are the cleric, a failed palace bureaucrat and expert in esoteric events. You arrive at the heart of the city with half the river in your boots and with a complete inability to remove your helmet. Out of your depth and with no official backup, you head out to investigate the tea shop and also probably step on as many toes as you can in this politically charged chaos. Inspired by classics like Planescape Torment and Baldur's Gate, Esoteric Ebb features colorful and really weird characters you get to interact with through deep and branching dialogues. The game boasts open-ended quests, wild spellcasting, turn-based encounters, flexible morality, cleric customization inspired by the 5e rule set, stretching from 1st to 6th level, and customizing your look and abilities through items and spells. I played the free second draft demo available on Steam. I've actually been meaning to do this for a while since the game has been on my wishlist for a few months, but I didn't have the time to do so until now. I am unsure how I feel about Esoteric Ebb. Based on the game's Steam page, I expected to like it a lot, as it combines two things that I love, D&D and Disco Elysium. I have to say that I think my expectations were probably too high, especially seeing as this is very much a smaller scale game than its inspirations. I won't call it a disappointment per se, especially since this is just a demo and there is still a lot that can be done to improve it by the time that it releases, but it certainly doesn't feel right now like it's going to end up being one of my favorite games like I had initially hoped when I discovered it on Steam. First off, you can definitely tell that the developer is passionate about all of the inspirations they mention on this game's Steam page. You can both see and feel the marks of these games, and it's fairly successful at combining ideas and systems, even though it doesn't necessarily feel particularly unique. I want to highlight one of the game's unique features though, that I think it does a stellar job with, which is the questing tree. This is a quest journal, a skill tree, and mind map all at once. Each quest branch can take root in your mind and alter both your cleric and your playstyle through game-changing feats. This I quoted from the Steam page. One quest that I managed to complete in the demo was related to two factions in the city, essentially capitalists and communists, and after I completed the quest, I had the choice in the questing tree to make this completed quest take root in my character's mind. A conversation between two of my attributes ensued as they argued about which faction or political side was correct, and then I could choose which attribute's opinion to claim as my own, and as a result, I gained a bonus related to my choice. This is perhaps the best feature I have seen so far in this game, because it manages to be better, in my opinion, than the Thought Cabinet in Disco Elysium, which people either only used as a character deepening system if they really cared about role-playing. However, usually this was done to the detriment of their character, because they had to spend level up points, or the thought that they internalized gave them various penalties to checks, or even worse, did nothing. Or on the other side, the optimizers min-maxed the hell out of the Thought Cabinet by using temporary bonuses and then forgetting a thought, or only internalized certain thoughts that gave XP or money bonuses or stuff like that. With the feats in Esoteric Ebb, it feels different when a feat takes root in the wake of you completing a quest in a certain way and deciding how you feel about it. I am certain that the min-maxing players will absolutely end up finding a way to do the optimal thing in the optimal order. They're probably going to end up making guides for which quests to complete first, which feats are the best for a certain type of playthrough. But I have to say, I personally felt like I could easily connect with the system. I was immediately able to understand how it worked and how it related to my character and my playthrough. I do question if perhaps this will push players towards rushing to complete quests and only afterwards interacting with secondary NPCs and exploring the rest of the area. I don't know, maybe that's what the designer has in mind. Obviously I can't tell since I didn't get to see the full extent of the questing tree system and how it interacts with everything else, but I still think this is a unique feature that has definitely gotten me thinking very deeply about it. I also wanted to mention the Behold system. This is essentially perception checks on NPCs that allow you to figure things out about that particular NPC. I really like this feature. I assume that some of the things that you can figure out about an NPC will be quite useful in interactions with that NPC, maybe bonuses to checks in these interactions, or maybe even advantage on certain checks. I like this because it's a very unique feature that uses the spirit of tabletop roleplay, in which you can get various advantages or bonuses on checks, or maybe an easier DC from your DM for a particular check if you notice certain details about an NPC or an object or a place. So I think Esoteric Ebb does a great job with this feature of making you feel like you have more options to interact with the world, that you can also look, not just talk or act, and it actually does something for you. I thought the level up system didn't feel very impactful or interesting. Essentially, I only got a bump to my HP and got to upgrade one of my attributes by 1 point. In Disco Elysium, for example, you get to upgrade just one of your skills that you use in various checks, not the whole attribute. The skill check system in Esoteric Ebb is simplified by being just based on the 6 attributes of D&D: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But I feel like through this simplification, it loses some character. The spells used in the game being 5e or 5e inspired is also not really adding something special or unique to the game. I do like the implementation of some of these spells, such as being able to use Mage Hand to reach an otherwise inaccessible area or object, or gaining an advantage to perception checks about NPCs called Behold checks if you have Druidcraft, being able to cast Comprehend Languages to understand something in a different language, or talking to a cat if you have Speak with Animals. But obviously these spells could just look a little different and be more immersive if they weren't just basically D&D copies. I am genuinely questioning whether using the D&D system is more just a crutch than something that actually enhances the gameplay and setting. There's lots of interesting details you learn about the setting, though a lot of them are through a little bit too much info dumping, in my opinion. But then there's just D&D spells, the 6 ability scores used in D&D, and for what reason exactly? Just to ensure that people understand that this is inspired by D&D, to add a certain level of familiarity or nostalgia for people. But in all honesty, I think the D&D related systems could all be just scrapped in favor of something original, and the story, setting, and game would just stand out more on their own. I like D&D, but I think in order to really benefit from using it, you have to heavily lean into it to make it the major thing, rather than just the base of a system you're using to resolve dice rolls and cast some magic. In terms of inventory and items, I think overall the equipable items are fine, if a little bit generic. However, one particular item feels for me like it's taking away from the power of the story. Esoteric Ebb tries to do the whole white check and red check thing from Disco Elysium, making some ability checks available to try again later if you so desire. However, instead of linking this reopening of the skill check with either the character leveling up or doing something in the world that could add some kind of bonus or recontextualize the check, Esoteric Ebb simply asks you to consume an item called a Shard of Jor. Of course, there's some kind of attempt to make the item fit within the universe, like it's some kind of fate-altering thing, but the thing is, it feels too gamey, too silly, and not in a positive way. The fun thing about the white checks in Disco Elysium was that you failed and you could try again, but the ability to try again was very much related to either working to increase your skill by spending your experience on it, or it was the game rewarding you for going out of your way to interact with various NPCs and objects around you, rewarding you for your curiosity and exploration. The most gamified version of reopening checks was buying some novelty dice from a dice maker, and if you bought those particular dice, a certain type of check would get unlocked. But that was very much done in a jokey way. It wasn't meant to be like a serious thing of like, oh yeah, totally, this is how it works. You just retry a check, you can just try again because you bought some dice or you consumed a particular magic item or whatever. I really hope that the developer rethinks this Shards of Jor situation, because it just doesn't feel compelling in its current iteration. Either make a more interesting system, like in Disco Elysium, where only certain actions or leveling up opens up these retryable checks, or otherwise honestly just remove the option to retry them at all. It certainly makes for a more interesting story and for more replayability if you just fail a check and that's that. The story moves on. Cheating the system with paying shards kind of just makes me think of using premium currency in a free-to-play game. It just sucks the joy of playing out of that situation, because if you have the item, you can just try again. The visuals are really nice. I think that the look of the world and characters is very evocative, and it manages to convey exactly that kind of silly fantasy tone that I think the game is going for, so that's a plus for me. The performance of the game, as far as I can tell, was really good in this demo. In terms of stability, I didn't encounter any bugs at all, no glitches or crashes. The game didn't stutter or have any loading or other visual issues that I could notice. It was just the text errors that were noticeable, but otherwise, very good quality. Moving on to writing. I did like some of the dialogue interactions, though they felt very variable in both tone and quality. Some interactions were more emotionally present, while others felt like prettied up info dumping, or some attempt at humor or snark that didn't quite land well. The dialogues that felt good, however, were really good. They got a smile out of me, or a laugh, or made me genuinely pause and think about what was going on. Since it's an early draft, I assume that the kinks are going to be ironed out later as the writer takes the time to reread and rewrite everything until it feels more cohesive. In terms of quality though, there were lots of typos and text errors, though I guess that's to be expected in an early demo of the game. Personally, as someone with a creative writing background, the typos bothered me very much, and I just wish the writer had taken a few more days to proofread the text or asked someone else to proofread it before releasing the demo. Even though it's a demo, having many obvious errors, to me at least, points out a kind of carelessness that doesn't really do favors for the way the audience perceives you as a developer. If even in this small part of the game, there's already so many mistakes, what other issues could be found in the much longer full game when it releases? Of course, it can just be that the developer wants to first get everything written down in a rough form and complete the entire story, and only afterwards get to rewriting, but I just don't think it's very pleasant to have to read through so many errors. There were also a few lines of NPC dialogue that were voiced. This seems a very weird choice to me. First, because only a handful of the characters' lines were voiced, while others were silent. The inconsistency felt worse than just not having any lines voiced at all. Second, because the voice acting quality was just not good. I'm sorry, I can't say anything nice about it. If this was just the developer testing out how audio can be added to dialogue lines, then that's fine, but I still don't think it should have made its way into our hands with this inconsistent and frankly bad voiceover. I don't mean to be so negative about what is obviously a work in progress, but often issues that are encountered early on in development of a project can snowball into larger issues if they are ignored or the root cause is not correctly identified and addressed. I simply hope that the developer is going to get a lot of useful feedback from everyone trying out the game, and that Esoteric Ebb will be a much better game when it releases. As a conclusion, I think Esoteric Ebb is an interesting little game that shows some promise, but it's very rough around the edges, and to me it feels like it's just lacking something. I think what is missing is heart, or perhaps better said, voice. A unique through line that pulls you in and says in no uncertain terms, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. I feel that Esoteric Ebb tries to be too many things at the same time and ends up being a messy amalgamation of all of them while not being enough of its own thing. This is of course my own very subjective opinion, and I highly suggest that if anything you've seen or heard about the game so far interests you, go check out the free demo on Steam, and if you tried out the demo, I'm curious, what did you think about it? How do you feel about the game in its current state? Are you optimistic about its release? Please do let me know in the comments, and remember to also leave some feedback for the developer on the game's Steam community page. Player feedback is incredibly useful for developers, especially so for indie developers. We'll just have to see how this one pans out. In any case, I'm very glad to see developers being inspired by Disco Elysium and making their own more narrative-focused RPGs. This can only mean good things for those of us who enjoy games that focus more on story and character. Until then, I hope you enjoyed my video about checking out the demo for Esoteric Ebb. If you're interested in seeing more videos about RPGs as well as other games that catch my attention, do remember to subscribe and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. This has been B-Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.